meeting to order. So a couple of things. I guess the first thing on the agenda is the election of officers. We've got to get that out of the way before we move forward.
Roll call.
After roll call. Would you call the roll?
Elvin Keimer,
Here.
Christine Berger,
Here.
Keith Kyle,
Here.
Ellen Cornell,
Here.
Christopher Allman,
Here.
Anthony Bernetti.
Here.
Mr. Vice Chair, you have 6 members present.
Thank you. So we have the chairperson who has, I'm going to say expired, he hasn't expired, but his term has expired. So we need to elect a new chairperson. So,
I would nominate Anthony Brunetti as chair.
Second.
Third, fourth.
100 billion seconds.
thank you. Any discussion other than yes and no? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0. 6-0.
You can vote for yourself.
Now we have another problem. Now we need
Vice Chair.
a vice chair.
I move that Chris Allman be vice chair.
I'd second
You have a
that.
second?
Who
Discussion?
seconded?
Christine? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Now we need a
And now we have a
secretary.
secretary.
I'll nominate Ellen Cornell as secretary.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Aye.
We're gonna switch.
Okay. Yeah, because I get the papers.
I just made you a new name tag too.
Good, how are you?
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, but staff has requested an extension, a continuation to October 17th, 24. So I'd entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries 6-0. Next item is C1, a request for extension of time for Egan, Plat M, Lot 159-10, 1400 Ocean Road, requesting an extension of time pursuant to Section 28D of the zoning regulations of the approved areas, which is due to expire on January 23rd, 2025.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Leach, and I am here representing Mr. Egan, who will be joining me in a moment. First, I'd like to congratulate all the officers on their election, and then tell you the reason why we're here. We're here to get an extension to be able to build this house that was approved after a lengthy hearing process before this board. The plans were originally developed, and based upon CRMC and staff review and the planning board, a nice compromise was made so that we were able to get variances for coastal and freshwater wetland overlay district for high water table because the DEM approved our individual sewer septic system. And we got a dimensional variance of 8.2 feet, so we wouldn't encroach so much on the wetland, and we got a 39 square foot lot area variance. We're asking that we put a full extension for the full 1 year from when we expire, which the expiration date presently is, I think, 1/23, is that correct? 1/23/26. And we have, part of the approval process required Mr. Egan to go to the CRMC and get relief. Their approval expires on January 1. So we're trying to coincide our approval, January 1, 2026. So we want the full year from where we are, so we get the same full year. And under the rule, your ordinance, we have to establish certain things, so I'd like Mr. Egan to be able to testify. Do you want to swear him in or just?
Please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last.
Robert J. Egan, E-G-A-N.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Egan, we received the approval back in 2/22, was the zoning hearing, and the decision came down in 2/17/22, and what happened since then?
Well, basically, because we were already in the middle of COVID, which caused a lot of problems with trying to get materials, and pricing had changed dramatically. Inflation had changed, but towards the end of 2022, my wife suffered a cardiac arrest on November 17th, 2022. Basically, her heart stopped. She was dead on the floor. So I had to put all considerations of building or anything else on hold.
And also, during that period of time, you couldn't have done anything that first year, because you were waiting, it took almost a year after the zoning approval to get the hearing from the approval from the COMC.
Correct. Their assent came in January of 2023. So at that point, my wife had just gotten out of the hospital, so everything just was on the table. I didn't do anything. They told me there was a good possibility she was going to have brain damage. So at that point, I was going to maybe nursing homes and assisted care. So I put the property up for sale, just so everybody knows, so there's clarity. I did put it up for sale because I thought my whole plan was completely out the window. So luckily, she did improve and she got better, and it took a while, but by the fall, she was at a point where I thought maybe we could start to proceed with starting to look at this a little bit more seriously. So I called Wayne at the building department and I asked him, can I put an elevator in? He said, no problem, as long as it stays in the footprint. So I started going and talking to some contractors, and they gave me numbers that were outrageous, and I just didn't have the money. The Avid builders told me it was $700,000 to $800,000 to build this house, an 1,800 square foot house. Another builder told me $600,000 to $700,000. So I just didn't have the money. So I haven't been able to do anything because I just don't have the financing. So what I'm asking you guys is, things are getting better now. I mean, yesterday they just reduced the interest rate down 0.5%. Gas prices are coming down. So things are getting better. So I'm hoping that with 2025, I may be able to be in a position to move forward.
Now, if you spent a great deal of money in a long period of time on this plan, you originally started when?
Sometime in 2019, I don't remember exactly when, but between the engineering with the pre-engineering, Scott Rabideau as an environmentalist, and Mr. Leach, I think I've spent between $20,000 and $25,000 to get to this point.
And you understand that while you're alleging hardship, you also have to establish that there's been no change in the neighborhood. Now, when was the last time you viewed the property?
Yesterday.
And between the time of your approval by this board and the time of yesterday, did you notice any change, significance?
No, not to the naked eye. No, I just walk the boundary on the street because that's all I can do, because it's all bushes and weeds and everything else. But from the street, there's no, I have not changed anything, and to the best of my knowledge, no neighbors have changed anything.
And one of the other questions is that the granting of the extension for time would not be inimical to the health, safety, welfare of the public generally, and for that you would rely upon the CMC approval, which is part of your packet, because the CMC approval was for 3 years, where yours was only for 2 years, and if the CMC doesn't think it's a problem, because they're willing to go out 3 years, we don't think it's a problem for you to go out 3 years. So under the circumstances, we request a 1-year extension from the expiration of our current permits, from the approvals for special use permit and variances. And we also point out it would be a hardship if we had to start all over again, because the law has changed. You've changed some of your dimensional requirements and some other requirements, and even though the standard might be less, it's just be a whole new hearing on new issues. So we feel it's only appropriate that this extension be granted.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, with respect to Egan, Plat M, Lot 159-10, 1400 Ocean Road, which is a request for an extension of time pursuant to Section 28D of the zoning regulations of the approved variance, which is due to expire on January 23rd, 2025. I'd move to grant the extension to January 23, 2026. I believe the applicant has met the burden of showing undue hardship with respect to the existing approval. Specifically, we heard testimony tonight from Mr. Egan that due to economic circumstances and family medical issues, that he was unable to proceed with the project as originally planned. And therefore, I think there's a strong basis for granting the extension request.
Second.
I have first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Next up is the
Mr. Chairman, do you want to do the continuance request first?
oh, sure. So we have continuous request from
It would be the Champlin.
Champlin. So we have a, well, let's-
D2 and D4, and the
and
Silver.
D4. We're not just continuing D4, we have to move it. Okay, we have to move it. Got it. Mr. Surdick.
Good evening, Mr. Brunetti.
Good evening.
Here on behalf of Champlin Welding and Champlin family, it's one property. Recently, I was contacted by the Butters Council, who may be here and may not be here, is in the back, and with some concerns that some of Butters raised on a deference to being a good neighbor and to trying to resolve things before we come before you. We're going to request an opportunity to converse over the next month and try to resolve some of those issues regarding buffering and trees and things on the property. So we'd request a continuance to your next meeting.
Next meeting, 10/17, Heidi.
Yes.
Any questions, any discussion?
I move to continue it to 10/17.
Second?
Motion being made and properly seconded to continue the Champlin Plat V Lot 15, excuse me, yes, to a date certain of 10/17/24. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good night, all.
And De Silva, D4, do we have anyone here from De Silva? I would entertain a motion to continue De Silva to the same date certain, 10/17/24. It's Plat L, Lot 113, 53 Ocean Spray Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Counselor. Okay, now we'll go back to D1. Verone's continuation from the last meeting, Plat NS, Lot 294, 105 Camden Road. Say where you are. Mr. Callahan, how are
Hello,
you?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good to see you all again tonight. Congrats on your appointments, well deserved. We're here on the continuance of the Verone application from last month. As you recall, it is the lot on the board. It's about more than 9,000 square feet, but the buildable lot area is about 7,000 square feet, and that adjusts all of our calculations. In the interim, the past month, Amy Saunders met with, I believe, Jill and Ryan at length. They compiled a new staff report with the updated numbers, which really didn't change much in the way of a presentation at all. I don't think we have much more to add based on the updated report because all that information was presented to you at the July meeting. So unless Gail Halleck is here as well, architect, Amy's here as the project surveyor, and Verone's here as well, so happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so I heard you say that not much has changed, but you do have a new...
Nothing has changed in
Nothing's
terms of
changed.
the presentation.
So the testimony from last month is still accurate?
Correct.
I have one question.
I was going to say any further questions, go ahead. I knew someone
Just
would.
one, I just need maybe James, you can just as a point of clarification. So the structure is being built with virtually, we'll call it the first floor, but it's completely unusable, correct? Like the mechanicals have to be on the living space. And the reason I'm asking this is in the context of the height variance, which I understand probably under the old ordinance, you were within the height variance, but it's changed from 35 to 30. But I just, if someone could just, so that it can be incorporated into the findings of fact that the height is really occasioned by that unique fact that the structure has to be built the way it is, on
Right, that's-
stilts, basically. I'm not using an architectural term, but I think that's what's happening here.
And
So if you
that's
could
a
just-
good point, because we were here, or at least at some point we were here, and this application was submitted with a building permit back in 2023. But we've asked this to be viewed under the 2024 laws, and I think there would not have been a height variance in 2023 prior to December 18th, 2023. But I think Amy can speak to the actual numbers in terms of the height more specifically.
You want me to re-swear?
We're continuing.
She's already, she was sworn in last time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, she's good.
Thank you.
So with Gail's testimony and knowing that it's in the flood zone, and it's a base flood elevation of 12 with a design flood elevation of 13. So everything on that lower area is uninhabitable, no living space, no utilities. And I think Gail explained that in matching the pitch for their addition, they had to increase the roof from what it was prior to, just to match that slope of the roof area there. So, and once again, we are under the 15% modification permit. If that was all we were asking for, that would be allowed under the modification permit. Is that, yeah.
Okay, just a quick question. The first floor
Yes.
is wall, breakaway walls, I assume?
It's all open,
It's all open.
yeah.
Well, it
Well,
will be breakaway.
substantially.
Yeah, it will be
breakaway walls, yeah.
Any further questions? No. Any further testimony, Ms. Callahan?
Not unless you have any questions, thank you.
No questions? Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
Hold,
Yes, sir.
you should ask for any additional public comment based upon the additional testimony.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's all right. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of the application based on tonight's testimony? Those were proponents. Is there anyone who is opposed? None. Okay, that one. Motion to close.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. What is the board's pleasure?
Chairman, members of the board, with respect to project summary, Verone, tax assessors, plat NS, lot 294, location 105 Camden Road. I would move to submit the following as the findings of fact. The applicant is represented by Attorney James Callahan, who provided information relative to the outline of the application. In addition, there was testimony, substantial testimony, I would add, offered by Amy Sonder in favor of the application, and as well as Gail Halleck Sear. In addition, both Mr. and Mrs. Verone offered testimony specifically with respect to their needs for an elevator at the property. Nobody spoke necessarily in favor of the application, and there was one individual, Mr. David Petracca, who spoke in opposition to the application, but his opposition was really to ask the board that if the zoning application was granted, that there be strict compliance with the zoning variances that we're being asked to grant or deny. I would incorporate into the findings of fact all of the testimony that was offered on the record, the complete project summary, all of the applicable diagrams, drawings, and I think there was one aerial photograph of the property as part of the findings of fact.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Right, just clarifying, you have a full board, so the alternate member doesn't need to vote. It's 5-0.
5-0, thank you.
Chairman, members of the board, with respect to project summary, Verone Tax Assessors Plat NS Lot 294, I would move to grant the relief requested, namely from section 4.3, Coastal and Freshwater Wetlands Overlay District Special Use Permit, section 4.4, Coastal Resources Overlay District, seeking a 140-foot variance and special use permit, from section 6.4, which is seeking dimensional relief, in particular 2.4 feet from the front yard setbacks, 6.5 feet from the right side yard setback, 4% or 350 square foot lot coverage variance, 4 foot 6 inch building height variance, and a 715 square foot FAR variance. During the testimony, and in particular, I would like to reference the testimony that was offered by, the expert testimony that was offered by Ms. Sear. The particular architecture of the structure is such that without some relief from the FAR, it was virtually impossible, based on her testimony, to design what would be, I guess to use her words, a habitable structure that was usable by humans to live in. So the way that this particular structure is to be constructed, it was necessary to get this variance, and I think that in this particular circumstance, the variance is such that it's going to allow for a very well-suited piece of architectural design that was rendered by Ms. Sear in this matter. She also testified that because of the vertical access issues, and this was also, Ms. Sandra also testified just a moment ago about this, but the way, because the structure is in this floodplain, that the first floor, I think the entire first floor is not usable space, and therefore all the mechanical permits and everything would be required to be on what we'll call the second floor, but really is the first floor of usable space. So that makes this a very unusual situation, which I think is befitting of a variance under the standards requested for a variance. So based upon the expert testimony that was offered, the hardship which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the land. It's not due to the general characteristics of the surrounding area. It's not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant. And the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. And the granting of the requested variances will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan of the town of Narragansett. And in particular, with respect to this, if one views the aerial photograph that was introduced into evidence. The setback variances are really impacting nobody else's property. We can see the height from 30 up to 35 feet is not affecting anybody else's view corridor or anything else from what I can tell, at least from looking at the various photographs. I'd also note that there were, well, I guess we'd have to ask you, Jill, there were 11 conditions that were part of the project summary. And I think as a condition of granting the variances, that all of those conditions have to be complied with.
Can you just say something about that?
Sure.
I'm just curious as to number 4. I don't think that complies with the potential.
I'm waiting for Jill to comment on that.
Oh,
That's the
if
number
you're,
four.
if the board is proposing, if your proposal is to approve as is, you can strike number 4, so it would be 1 through 3, and then 5 through 11.
Okay. Strike number 4. My motion is to grant the relief requested with the conditions 1 through 3 and 5 through 11.
Motion,
Second.
motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
and congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Spangler, Plat L, Lot 1-13, 43 Major Auto Road. Mr. Landry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney Matthew Landry, on behalf of the applicants, Robert Spangler, Joanne Powell. I'm joined by Mr. Spangler on behalf of the applicant, who's here, and I'll ask him to come up shortly. Also joined by Lori Keene of Keene Architecture, who designed the home and most of the plans that you have before you. I'll ask her to go through the plans, some of the design constraints. But first, I'd like to just give a brief introduction and an overview of the project and how we got here. Property is located at 43 Major Arnold Road. It is in very close proximity to a coastal feature in the ocean, as you can see. I'm sure most of you are familiar with some of the design constraints. In this area, there's been some recent additions and construction to some of the homes in the area that we'll show you some aerials of in a few moments. It's an R10 zoning district, so this renders this lot a legal, non-conforming or substandard lot of record. It's just shy of 9,000 square feet, and I'm sure, as you're aware, your ordinance allows a reduction in the setbacks and certain dimensional requirements in proportion to the non-conformity. And Ms. Keene has prepared sheet A1 in your plan set, contains a matrix of the existing conditions as well as the proposed conditions, and you can kind of follow along with some of the conditions that are changing, what's being proposed, what's being altered, particularly with respect to lot coverage, net and gross, obviously comes into play here, FAR regulations and hardscape restrictions. Lori will get into those in a little bit more technical detail, but the staff report accurately reflects those calculations and the relief that's being requested. Given the proximity to the ocean, it brings into play CRMC restrictions as well, and FEMA regulations, which is part of the reason why the applicants are here making this proposal. They want to make the home FEMA compliant. There's no bedroom increase. There's currently 3 bedrooms, 3 bath in the single-family residence. The proposal is to maintain 3 bedrooms. There's no expansion. I think that's an important point. The desire of the applicants to update and modernize this home relates to their family's use. They've had this for a number of years. They use it as a summer home with their family. It's very small and somewhat outdated, even though they've done a lot of interior renovations. They'd like to spend many more years here, and some modern updates are necessary in order to facilitate those needs. Obviously, bringing it into FEMA compliance has its own set of hurdles in compliance with CRMC, so Lori's done an excellent job of navigating some of those things, which is a reason why we're requesting the relief here before you this evening. One of the most significant constraints I think is worth mentioning is the fact that the coastal feature is so close. CRMC restricts any construction within 50 feet of the coastal feature. Now, this lot is roughly 8,900 square feet, but almost 3,000 square feet is seaward that you can't build on. It's almost 30% of the lot is rendered unusable as a result, which is why we can't go seaward with any expansion. The footprint addition that's being proposed is only 300 square feet. It's very, very modest. You can see that in the top right corner. How to use this? This portion right here, it's for a modest, welcoming entryway, laundry room, and mechanicals that also need to be raised to comply with FEMA regulations. One of the requests before you is for a side yard setback variance. I will note that we're actually improving the existing setback by 2 feet, so we're actually pushing this back 2 feet from what currently exists. That was something that came up during the planning board's review of this and rendering their advisory opinion. There was some concern about ingress and egress in case of fire safety and things of that nature, but there's actually an improvement of 2 feet here, so I think that is worth noting. But we're already within the setback, so we're making it better by 2 feet, but still need a variance with respect to that side yard. There's also some requests for lot coverage variance, mainly stemming from the fact that most of this is unusable. Most of the net lot area is constrained because of the coastal regulations as well as the FAR and hardscape regulations.
Mr. Lindsay, if I can interrupt you for a second, the items you were just pointing to on the side yard, that
Right
top
there.
right, yeah, so it appears that that first square, is that new or is that existing? That right there?
I'll ask Lori to go through that in
Through
more
that when we get
detail.
there.
It'll probably
Okay, trying
make
to
more
understand.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah, coming from her, it'll probably sound a lot more eloquent than me trying to explain it. But the only note I'm trying to make here is that with this bump here, we're I think 3.5 feet from the existing side yard. We're increasing that to 5 feet or 5.5 feet. So there's actually an improvement there by 2 feet based on the design, and that's where the mechanicals are going to be housed. So I'll have Lori speak specifically with respect to that. So there will be a second floor addition, again, because we couldn't do any seaward expansion. Really, the only way you could improve this property is to go upwards, as well as allow for room for some mechanicals and additional necessary space for the laundry room and a welcoming entryway. With that, I'll ask Ms. Keene to be sworn in and go through the plans for the board.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your and spell your full name for me.
Laura, L-A-U-R-A, Keene, K-E-E-N-E.
Thank you.
I go by Lori, though.
Ms. Keene, can you please just describe your current occupation, place of employment?
Yes, I am an architect, and I work at Keene Architecture in Wakefield.
And how long have you been in that position?
4 years.
Do you hold any professional licenses or certifications?
And prior to that, 12 years at Tomorrow Architects in Newport. At what architects? Tomorrow Architects. Yes, AIA and NCARB, which is American Institute of Architects and National Council of Architecture Registration.
And I'm sorry, how long have you held those certifications?
Oh, the same 4 years. 5.
Have you testified before any municipal boards in the state of Rhode Island?
Yes.
including the town of Narragansett Planning Board.
Yes,
Have you ever testified in front of the Narragansett Zoning Board?
yes,
Have you been recognized as an expert in your field of architecture?
yes.
Can you just give an example of some of the municipalities that you testified and recognized?
Tiverton, Charlestown, Jamestown, Middletown, South Kingstown, Little Compton, Warren.
Are you familiar with the town of Narragansett's building and zoning regulations?
Yes,
Are you familiar with the regulations applicable to coastal construction?
yes,
Does that include FEMA and CRMC regulations?
yes.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to recognize Ms. Keene as an expert in the field of architecture.
For purposes of this hearing, Ms. Keene will be recognized as an expert in architecture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keene, is this property subject to both FEMA and CRMC regulations?
Yes,
Does the imposition of those regulations create significant design constraints to the property?
yes,
Did you obtain a preliminary determination from CRMC prior to submitting this application?
yes, and it revealed that the front of the house is the limit of construction for any additional footprint. So basically, they wanted you to be 50 feet from their coast, which happens to be the front of the house.
Is it correct that CRMC restricts any seaward expansion on this property because of the coastal feature? Okay, and that coastal feature was marked and identified on the surveying plans that were submitted?
On the surveying plans, yes.
The property is a substandard lot of record, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Does the imposition of the town of Narragansett zoning ordinance also present some difficulties and hardships?
I think that it would be, if you were to follow all the rules from everybody, it'd be like nearly impossible to add on to the house in any additional form, addition-wise.
Did you prepare a supplemental exhibit for the board to consider what would be allowed by right on the property?
Yes.
Okay, do you have that you can show briefly? And I'm just going to ask you to identify what the board is looking at here. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, this is a supplemental exhibit that I'd like to introduce your position just so everybody can follow along.
Sure.
Yeah.
This way.
I think you're this way, sorry, all the way, out of
All
all,
the
here we
way,
go.
all the way down. Thank you.
Ms. Keene, while those are being pointed out, do you refer to this as the red box?
Diagram, yes.
Diagram.
Yes, I do. I like to do these because it's a visual representation of what would be allowed by right if we weren't coming and graciously asking for your gracious support for this project.
Can everybody see this? We'd like her to come forward.
Come forward.
Hang on, hold on. This will work.
Okay.
So Ms. Keene, the red box that's on the top of that exhibit, this red box diagram, does that accurately reflect the size and scale of what could be done by right?
Yes, so what this is showing is that we're meeting side yard setbacks, so we wouldn't be here for that. We'd be up to 10.77 feet in for a second floor addition, leaving the first floor as is. We wouldn't be asking to come out, we'd be going up directly above that. And we wouldn't be asking for height relief, we wouldn't be asking for lot coverage, or any of the other ones that are listed.
Now, Ms. Keene, in your professional opinion, does this represent a more intrusive example of what would be allowed on the property?
Yes, our whole goal in designing this was to kind of create a more approachable and welcoming approach to the house, rather than kind of this very imposing flat wall, essentially, like, at you that, you know.
Was it your intent with the proposed design to maintain the integrity and the character of the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes, I think we're trying to enhance it, if anything, too, just kind of bringing that charm back in with the roof pitches that we're proposing. They're actually all kind of pointing inward, or the center of the lot, not outward. And even we're proposing a covered porch that's open. It's like 40% of this, what we're asking for is an open covered porch to, again, bring that human scale down closer to the ground, but allow kind of a more welcoming way into this house. Right now, you walk directly into the kitchen, and there's no kind of openness.
Okay, and Ms. Keene, the second photograph on this exhibit, is that an accurate representation of what's being proposed?
Yes.
Okay, could you just guide the board through the proposed improvements and the request for relief, as well as your plans, please?
Which were, so you guys have copies of this set of plans that would go to the second page there, third page, excuse me. The floor plan.
Is that sheet A2?
Yes. And so that's the proposed version. So what we are looking to do is, really when we started this design and met with Bob and Joanne a little bit more than a year ago, last summer, and we had kind of talked about the idea that you do just walk into the kitchen. It feels tight and unwelcoming, and that how could we kind of improve that aspect of it, as well as increase some living space for them. Another concern was that there were some cracks in the existing foundation and the structural elements of the house. And upon further investigation, a corner of the house goes through the floodplain, the VE zone, which is the most restrictive. So any sort of substantial improvement would require that that entire house is FEMA compliant, which then led us to now raising the house up, which is what we're doing. But we also wanted to make like a very big effort to keeping that height down, as the ordinance itself shows, and kind of I think the town as a whole wants to keep those heights specifically on the coast, you know, lower. So we're actually a couple feet under the height restriction that would be allowed, because we're really making an effort to kind of keep it lower, which is why we're going out, and again, here for that requested relief. But anyways, that's where I was going on that.
Ms. Keefe, if you could just highlight the footprint improvements. I believe there was a question about
Sure,
what was
yeah,
existing
actually
and what's being proposed.
I have another board for you that kind of spells it out, if it's okay to add as another with these handouts. Yes. Should I start with you on this one? If you're.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Accepted.
a supplemental exhibit, number 2, we have Ms. Keefe, it shows 2 proposed floor plans.
So what this is trying to show is that right now there's an existing deck on the face of the house that's a few feet off the property line. What we're trying to do is take that footprint of that existing deck, shift it in toward the center of the lot, and align it with the outside of the actual house. Then we're in the situation where we need to be FEMA compliant, so I can't put any of the mechanicals downstairs, and therefore we're putting them up on the first floor, and that's what that like 70 square feet of mechanical space is showing. And then again, kind of enveloping it in with the covered porch to finish it off and allow for a little bit more of a welcoming space. Again, it's only 4 feet deep on one leg, 5 feet on another. And even the stairs are going to the center of the lot so that we're not here asking for further encroachment on with the stairs up to it. Since again, now we're a little bit higher up than we were.
Ms. Keene, do the existing regulatory constraints restrict you from building seaward?
Yes.
Is that part of the reasoning or the need for you to propose these improvements where they're located?
Yes, because we don't want to go straight up and have an imposing massing along the street. We're trying to keep it lower and more welcoming and more character with the surrounding neighborhoods.
Approximately how large is the footprint proposed for addition?
This living area, including mechanical space, is 209 square feet, and then the 205, and then the covered entry is 109. So a total of 314.
Okay, so there's 314 square feet of proposed footprint modification here?
In the front, and then there's a deck in the back that we're just trying to infill. Multiple layer levels and a bulkhead, so just trying to like fill it in across. Not as far out, but so it makes more sense back there.
Ms. Keene, one of the comments I made in my initial remarks was with respect to the left side yard setback. Can you verify that there's actually an improvement of 2 feet in the left yard side back?
Yes.
Side yard setback?
The handout also kind of speaks to it as well, that the deck right now is about 3.5 feet off the property line, and we're moving the structure into more than 5 feet, just under 5.5.
Okay, so that's an improvement from what exists today.
Yes.
Ms. Dean, is there any increase in the number of bedrooms from what is existing today?
No, there's 3 bedrooms and we're proposing 3.
And the proposed use will be maintained as a single-family residence?
Yes.
And this is, to your understanding, the applicant's personal use and family use? Ms. Keene, was the size and scale of the design an integral part of keeping with the nature of the neighborhood?
Yes, it was, it is very important to me. It was also very important to both Bob and particularly Joanne that, you know, she wanted to make sure that this house really reflected a nice scale that was approachable and welcoming. Maintained privacy on the either side of the house though, that, for both sets of neighbors, and that their family could enjoy together.
Ms. Keene, do you have an aerial photo of this area to show the surrounding neighborhood?
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, we have some handouts of the same board, if I may introduce that as an exhibit as well. So Ms. Keene, does this aerial photo accurately depict the general neighborhood?
Yes, so this was, I think, taken maybe a year or 2 ago, but you can see this is their house 43 Major Arnold, and then the 2 houses on either side, as well as the surrounding neighborhood. That really does depict both single-story houses, but many have second floors, and what else?
Yeah, Ms. Keene, before you leave that, is the proposed design modest in size and scale compared to the neighboring properties?
Yeah, and if anything, we're trying to actually, having it be a bit bigger would actually be more in keeping with the surrounding areas. In general, the roof lines do all kind of go north to south in this, but more along the coast, just like we're proposing. We are proposing a partial second floor. Again, everything's still under the height limitation, but it would be more in keeping with many of the other homes that are there, because we're not trying to like create an overpowering situation.
Yeah, the homes immediately to the left of the applicant's property, will those, will the proposed design be actually lower than those neighboring properties?
Yes, it is. Quite a few feet, actually, from the higher one. We do have, from the surveyor, we do have the height of that, but conservatively 3 feet lower.
Okay, so Ms. Keene, does the proposed design, in your opinion, present any issues in terms of views and light and sight and things of that nature?
No, again, I think that if we went up, it would be more imposing. So that is why we're here asking to come out more. And that in the back there's a small gable end that kind of provides privacy from this neighboring house. So it's almost mimicking, where in the front we kind of provide a little bit of privacy from the other neighboring house. That would benefit both of them, wouldn't impact views. That's, again, that mechanical room and front entry addition.
Ms. Keene, in your professional opinion, is the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief from due to the unique characteristics of this property or the structure?
Yes, as it is non-conforming and undersized. That when we started the design, which was a year ago, the modification hadn't come into play. I understand that it did, so we are here asking for 2 additional variances that last summer we wouldn't have been asking for. And that CRMC would permit twice the size addition that we're proposing. So we're only increasing structural lot coverage 25% and not going more than that. And that it is, because the house is in a flood zone, any substantial improvement to it would require us to meet the FEMA regulations
So in
of
your
raising it up.
So is it your testimony that any modification to this property would ultimately require some sort of hardship variance?
Any structural modification would likely, yes.
Is the hardship, or strike that, is the hardship presented to the applicant the result of any of their prior action? Or any prior
No.
action of the applicant?
No.
If the board were to grant the variance, would it, in your opinion, alter the general character of the surrounding neighborhood?
No, I think that, like we kind of said, there's many two-story homes within the neighborhood, particularly on either side of them. Each have 2 stories.
In your professional experience as a professional architect, will the proposed design have any detrimental impacts at all on the surrounding neighborhood?
No, I think it would improve it.
Is the proposed design respectful in size and scale and character for the neighborhood?
Yes, it maintains a similar height. They do, average-wise across, and massing-wise, I think that it kind of brings together some that have multiple different gables, some that are very simple, kind of refines them together. So it's a nice mix of bringing down the massing and the scale, having the welcoming nature. We've got a lot of kind of the natural palette of colors with the cedar shingles, the white trim, kind of all coastally inspired. That kind of, all speak to Narragansett as a town and the particular neighborhood or the community at large.
In your opinion, if the relief is not granted by this board, would that result in more than a mere inconvenience to the applicant?
Yes.
Is the relief sought minimal to a reasonable enjoyment of the applicant's property?
Yes. First is a 1-story addition for the lateral addition that we're proposing. That doesn't have any second floor above it. It is, I think I had mentioned, like 40% of what we're asking for on that addition is open covered porch. It has a roof, but it's not living space. Again, to kind of put that solid and void that the whole structure speaks to. And then of that, like, quote, living space, 70 of it is dedicated to the mechanicals, which is a salt box design. If we go back maybe a couple boards here. This is a low headroom. It's kind of meant to be more like a shed kind of on the property, because we're not trying to, ask for the relief on the front yard and then also go all the way up as high as we can go, right? And these roof lines kind of all pointing toward the middle is trying to, refocus it, even though, yes, we are asking for the relief on the side yard. The overall feel on the property, I think, will feel a lot more centered when you are there. And anybody kind of coming by. And we might have one other. CRMC will allow for more, and since the planning board meeting that we had about a month ago, we have reduced the square footages that we are asking slightly, but they are lower than they were.
Ms. Keene, with respect to the town's coastal resource overlay district, are you familiar with those regulations?
Yes, I am.
Does the ordinance specifically authorize this use by a special use permit?
Yes.
Does this proposal before the board satisfy all the requirements and performance standards of the ordinance?
Yes.
In your professional opinion, will the proposed use have any substantial or permanent impact on the uses in the surrounding neighborhood?
It will have
Will it have any substantial
and
impact
not
on the
negative by
surrounding
any means, no.
Okay, and I believe you testified that the proposed design will not have any impacts on views, lighting, anything of that nature? Okay. And I'm not sure if I asked you this, Ms. Keene, I apologize. Is it accurate that most of the property, 30% of the property is unbuildable
Yes,
because of
that's the
CRMC
other one on
regulations?
the list. Thank you. Yes, so the property is just under 9,000 square feet, where 10,000 is required, and about 3,000 of that is kind of that for the coastal feature back to the property line. So more than 30% is what these numbers are restricted to, as it's a net lot calculation rather than the full lot calculation, which would reduce the relief that would be asking for.
Okay, and that attributes to the inherent hardship
Yes.
with design? Okay, and Ms. Keene, with regard to the preliminary determination, did CRMC indicate that this could be reviewed administratively as designed?
If, yes, yep, if nothing changed to what we submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no additional questions. Welcome any questions from the board.
I do have a couple. First, you said you reduced square footage. Ryan, can you bring up the existing first floor and second floor? And then can you show me where these reductions have been made?
So it was more the calculations of it all, to be honest. The actual footprint of the house got slightly bigger, and then we reduced something else, I promise you, because the numbers were worked out. But I think we reduced the second floor space and corrected the addition space that we had. But all the relief that we had to ask for from you came down 0.1% or 2%. It's more in the staff report than I'd say.
Yeah, and I can clarify that there was some discrepancy on our part with net versus gross lot coverage and some confusion. I think the applicant before us had similar issues. So we were able to correct that, and to the planning board, Lori, Ms. Keene and staff conferred and cleaned all that up, so everything before you was accurate.
So does that account for, in your chart that you have of what relief is requested, that accounts for
Yes.
that? Because that's not, because that's obviously not correct, according to staff, right?
If you're looking at the packet that has a red, in the title block, it should have a red, like, revised post-planning meeting down in the corner.
It should, on,
Then it should have the correct.
the matrix in the original submission
Right.
has not been updated, but thank you for pointing that out. So Ms.
Okay.
Keene prepared a supplemental set in September. Sheet A1 has the appropriate matrix with all of the correct calculations that conform to
Got it,
staff's report.
okay, so I was looking at the wrong thing.
Yes.
It has been
Yeah, and I
submitted.
apologize, yeah.
Has been submitted to staff or has not?
I'm sorry?
The revised one has been submitted to staff?
Yes, it has.
Yes.
Okay.
That was in
Yes.
September.
It was after the meeting, September 5th.
Yes, we spoke with
For
Ms.
sure.
Keegan. Yes, and so the report that you have before you, you'll see is strike out and underline, which are the changes
Report is
that
set.
reflect, the modified numbers.
I have a few
Yes,
questions.
okay,
Are
go
you
ahead.
done? No, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you weren't done.
Well, I just had one more. So I understand you reduced the side yard setback from, it was 3 to 5, so you increased it to 5, almost 5.5.
Yes.
I'm thinking safety. Has there been any thought of, can emergency vehicles get behind the house based on that? It seems rather small.
Yes, I would agree that that's well. We do have vehicle access on the other side, but we are improving it beyond what they could do right now. So firefighter-wise, in terms of foot trespassing beyond would be more than adequate at this point.
On the right side?
Correct.
Okay.
Or, yes, on the right side, in that photo, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Ellen?
Okay, this may not be a question for you guys, but can someone remind me where the requirement is to use the net square footage versus the,
Staff. Ryan?
versus the gross on situations like this? Like,
Sure.
Is it an ordinance?
It is,
Okay.
it's in, I don't think it's been codified into our Muni code, it's in chapter 1087, it's section 6.4B.
I knew that.
Right,
Did, okay.
you all knew that.
And there's no exception for when, so much percentage of the lot is unusable because of it? There's no, it's an automatic.
Right, so
Always
the
net, no
lot
matter-
coverage or in a high water table, the building and site coverage are calculated on the net lot area. It was the planning board and the council's attempt to keep appropriately sized houses on lots that are half seaward of the feature in this case.
I would note that there is a provision in the ordinance that would exclude swimming pools from a net lot coverage, and I would argue the ocean should. But don't.
Try on that. That was creative. Okay, so I also have a question on FAR. I'm a little bit familiar with this requirement, probably more than I should be. Jill, did they take out at all the provision, the FAR table in the ordinance?
Yes.
Did they take out the part underneath that says, notwithstanding the above, no blah, 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 blah? Can someone pull that up? Do you have it? I'm sorry, I know, I have way too much familiarity with this one.
So finish the question, and
Okay,
I'll try to
So
help.
there's a provision in the FAR ordinance, it's a statement under the chart, that says, in no event shall the
The tier above,
square foot, the tier below, the tier above.
that should still
thing-
be in there.
Okay,
Yes, it
so
is
then I
still
think you're got, I don't think we need FAR then.
I would defer to the building official on that.
Okay, if you have a I know, my lot's 5,000, I can build 2,000 square feet. And I did build 2,000 square feet without FAR. Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
You're gonna want to.
Too late.
Yeah, put 1118.
I'm just trying to limit this because this is a lot, and I'm doing a presentation, so.
Yeah, I got it.
Give me 1 minute, Ms. Bruno. Thanks.
Because we don't like FAR.
I know, so and respectfully, one of the design considerations in this project specifically was lot coverage and FAR. I don't wanna be here asking for that relief, genuinely. Net lot coverage, that got us. However, gross we're under, if you do compare it to a gross lot, we are under. And then the FAR, again, without the modification that just went into effect in January, we wouldn't be here asking, we would be at the 0.35 that is striked out in the current ordinance. Further everything, because I agree with you.
The FAR is 0.3, is that what you have? So the FAR, Ms. Cornell, is 0.3?
Right, but if you apply, yes, if you use the square footage of the lot and you take 0.3 and times it by the square footage of the lot, yes, you are off. But that's not what you do because of the bottom, which is where. In no event, blah, 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 I can't remember the exact words.
There is an asterisk under the table, if I'm reading this correctly, it says in no instance shall the calculated gross floor area of the structure at any tier be required to be less than the maximum allowance. Tier above it, is it?
Of the tier above it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the tier above it is the.
0.35.
Is well, yeah, but the maximum allowance of the tier above it, I think, is 2,000 square feet. If you apply 4,000 to 0.35, 4,000 times 0.35, is it 4,000 square feet? Is that the tier?
4 to 5, you would apply 5.
So 5,000, if you did 5,000 square feet times 0.3, what do you got?
0.35. You would do the 5 times the
0.35, right, what do you get? I think it's 2,000.
We don't carry scales or calculators.
5,000 times what?
0.35.
Right, it doesn't, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise.
1750.
5,000.
Oh, so you guys, so it
5,000
did get
times.
changed.
The
They
numbers
reduced
changed.
everything.
Yeah, the calculation, the FAR numbers changed in chapter 1118 in the last go around.
Got it, okay, so the numbers changed,
So they're
okay.
still higher than the tier above it would. So there's still relief from the FAR.
Okay.
But I appreciate the.
But they only need, they need less relief, because they need, it's 17.5 instead of the 168, but they still need relief.
And I think that was
Okay.
part of the problem when we initially submitted it. Lori had started this design before those regulations went into play, which is part of the challenge here. And then, obviously, the net lot area is significantly reduced because of the location, proximity to the coastal feature. And I think it was 5,600 square feet out of
Is the net, yes.
8,900.
So we would have met we wouldn't be here asking for the FAR relief if we were here before you last year or in January. But here we are.
Time is everything.
Yes, and I knew, and like, completely, that's just pointing out.
It's okay.
Ellen, do you have other questions?
Let me see. I think I do, but someone else can ask the question first.
Ms. Keen, the aerial photo, not the one that you gave us tonight, but the one that's part of the project summary, shows the houses to the south roughly in line setback-wise You know the photo, yeah, okay, that photo.
Okay.
The house to the north is closer to the street.
Mhm.
Your proposed setback, how's that line up with the house to the north?
It's a little bit in front of it.
Yeah.
The salt box shed is a couple feet in front of it. I don't know the exact dimension offhand, but it is, yes.
So you'd say a couple, 2 feet?
Yeah, if that, if that. I can probably figure it out somewhat easily. It's not easy, thank you. Look, we're reducing already. On the site plan, so that photo is skewed, it actually makes it look worse, so like on the site plan, it's less. It's probably a couple feet. But, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
I have a question. So it's a beautiful design, and driving through the neighborhood, it would definitely look beautiful in there. But the question is how come you have to go out so far? Like, could you not make it happen?
I
You know,
know.
like I know you have 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, but I'm seeing an office and sitting areas and stuff like that. Like, do you really need to go out past everybody else? Because I saw that when I drove by. I'm like, that seems like it's going to be the furthest one, like getting closer to the street. And I know you're set, you know, the ocean's on one side,
Yep.
you can't do anything. But like, what was so important that you needed to ask for that part? That's what you know, I have a hard time with.
I agree, that was, standing here before you was gonna be the hardest one to meet, and I don't take that lightly. I would say it's a multifaceted answer. One was, driving down that street, there are other structures that have a more imposing, kind of take you back, massing to them. And really in an effort to not recreate that by, you know, not being here for the relief, we are coming, there's barely headroom in there. It's a mechanical room, like it's meant to be as low as we possibly can. Again, we're lifted up, but as low as possible. And we have to have some sort of like covered porch space. Basically what we did is we took their existing deck and moved it over and said, okay, let's fill that part in as living. We asked for the deck, and there's nowhere else to put the mechanicals. Closer we put them seaward is like the worse off for them. So we're trying to get them far enough away. If anything, if they could be in a detached shed like all day, they would be, right? And then I would say second, and also trying to get that welcoming part of that neighborhood. When you come down that street, that cross street, which is escaping me, that, is it Major Arnold that?
Captain Free
Thank you. You really do approach this. This is the house, like as you turn down there, that you'll see. And right now, that is not the streetscape that you do see. You are just overtaken with structures that have that imposing, basically follow this kind of mentality of the red box. And then I would also say, if we were asking for a lot of relief, and in order, and anytime I approach a project, I'm always looking for, well, what's the most reasonable way to go about this? Because like I don't want to be here asking for it either. If you wouldn't mind to go back to the site plan for me for a moment, please. Sorry. Oh, sure. So one of those parameters were the this is the FEMA floodplain, that line right there. If we were to just say, okay, forget the addition, forget it all, we need to lift this house up, or we need to move this house behind the FEMA line. This house, this footprint, and this existing deck, if we took this corner and moved it backwards to be outside the floodplain, so we wouldn't need to lift it up, we wouldn't have this mechanical issue, the covered porch could be more modest as it is, we could find space inside, what have you, we would be asking for the exact same amount of relief before you today that line is. Actually, we're an inch inside of that. If that makes sense. So, can I go to the screen? Like if I took this house, including its existing deck, and pushed it clear of this line, this deck would be just outside that line. So we're inside of what we would be if we weren't trying to make it FEMA compliant in any of that. So that was kind of that like scope of body that we weren't going to go beyond. And then from there, try to keep it as low as possible. as welcoming as possible, as, less impeding on you. Because, yes. Thank you.
I have another question. So the mechanical area in front, you said has a low, you try to make it a low ceiling.
Yes, it's as if it's a 4-foot crawl space, right? You know, it's
Is
5
that, is that counted, is that part of FAR, or they're exceeding FAR without that space?
There is a
So
provision where you could
that's-
eliminate mechanicals, but we had kind of gone, we did the back and forth, and it was a lot to kind of get into.
No, so the FAR square footage is calculated without regard to that?
Including it, yes,
that.
we included it, yes.
What's the height of the ceiling in that one?
The salt box edge is like a 5-foot plate, and the other edge is like a 7-foot plate. So right in the middle, you probably have 7 feet, but other than that, there's no other real headroom, right, because it like comes down.
So, all right,
Anything less than the 5 foot would be not counted towards the FAR,
right, I think it's 6.5, right? 6.5 or less?
5 feet or less.
5 feet or less?
Yeah.
Yes. In the slopes until it hits 7 feet or something.
Okay,
but,
so you can't bring that all down to 5 in any way?
the ceiling height could be down to 5, as long as we can get a hot water heater in it. I don't know how tall is that.
And then you wouldn't have to count that toward FAR?
We just included it because we were again at that statute of trying to hit the .35 and not, you know. I
So
know.
what I'm having trouble with, I'll tell you, and I'm going specifically to the planning board recommendation, I mean, there's, you know, these other things, I mean, the development standards, I guess we're talking about, but that there are available alternatives to the project. So that's, you know, if there are, then it's hard to give you,
Sure.
relief. The other thing I'm wondering is the deck in the back, you're significantly expanding that, you're bringing it over to the other part of the house. Is that makes the lot coverage bigger, right?
Yes.
Yes, so if you reduce the deck back, in the back, to what it was, to kind of what it was.
It looks larger, but can I explain it for a moment? Because if we could reduce it, we would, but there's a landing and a bulkhead. So we're the actual area here is like this, and I just wanted 4 feet of stair so we don't have to have a center handrail, or otherwise we could bring the deck back a little bit more. It's just like constructability of it all. These stairs aren't there, those are existing, so we took those away there and just connected. It's a landing that's lower, it's dilapidated and it's gonna go. There's a bulkhead there that would count toward existing lot coverage. It's such a small area back there that if it were mine, it seems like you almost would fall off of it now because you expect a deck to be there to a certain extent. We really, really made an effort, even in all the way back to the initial design, that we were trying not to, you know, ask for as much as we were. In the end of the day, it's the 300-foot roofed addition. Just feels like we really, we came trying everything we could. We didn't come asking for more and like significantly cutting it down and play that game. We kind of came in with, we're trying to keep it as tight as we can.
The only other thing I would add to that, that there is an exemption for open decks in your ordinance if the lot coverage, if you satisfy the lot coverage. We weren't able to apply that exemption because the existing structure already is non-conforming and doesn't comply. So it's yet another hardship in the interpretation of the ordinance that this is already at a disadvantage and we don't get the benefit of those exemptions because of what's going on already on this property, notwithstanding any improvements. So that's another area where there's an imposition of that regulation that affects the allowable lot coverage and things of that nature, where normally they would be exempt.
I don't know if I either, I maybe not understand, but you also need a hardscape variance? And why is that? What is where, can you explain that?
Can I go one step back to your point on the FAR, like, why am I here telling you we can't reduce things, and, right? I agree with you, like, I've had conversations, there are statutes in chapter 1100 that says like detached accessory structures under 144 square feet would not count, so like that's our living spaces to put in, into kind of perspective, thank you. We can't have a detached structure to have stairs that come down and have stairs that go back up because of the FEMA rule, right? So it just, we can't apply that statute, even though, again, like trying to use any kind of, like rules to stay within was really the goal. So like, again, that 144 square feet is, you know, is intentional in design, that we're not asking for more of that. Unenclosed carporches and decks, we know that, and then attached or detached garage space used for storage. Well, we can't drive up to that FEMA, you know what I mean? So it's like that wouldn't have applied, but now it has to because of FEMA, and like that's nothing we can do about that, right? We'd be here asking for more, so if we just pushed the house back, like I said, we'd be here asking for the exact same front yard relief, and that side yard would be an issue for safety. And so that's, I guess, the point. But then you had a second question, and I apologize.
Parking area, the hardscape.
Oh, the hardscape, okay. Hardscape. So if we rewind to January, and we're at 40% or 0.4, and we didn't increase any parking, we wouldn't be asking for a hardscape relief. We have, because there is parking and it's an issue down there and it's restricted in the summer, we've proposed to increase the parking, another parking spot, just because parking is an issue. The owners would like to do it, and that is causing us to go higher on that hardscape. But I point out that despite that increase in driveway and this front yard addition that we are asking, our softscape, our front yard softscape, is still 15% more than required. So like, we're just it's just a really hard lot, I tell you. So we're trying everything we can do to make the most sense of the spirit of the law and the neighborhood, and do everything we can, pushing a little bit of everything.
And because there's no increase in bedrooms, as staff had pointed out, normally you'd be required with 3 bedrooms to have 600 square feet of parking area. We don't trigger that because there's no increase, but I think it is important because this area, I believe, past the regulation, you can't park overnight on the street. Parking is a concern down there. So it's another way to address an ancillary issue.
It'd be a pervious parking area at that. Because that counts as hardscape in this town. So it's a pervious driveway.
Which has always been interesting to me, because I don't, anything that's pervious, it shouldn't, to me, it's not hardscape, but it is.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, the Ms. King and Mr. Landry are stating that it's a 3-bedroom, it's an existing 3-bedroom, and it's staying a 3-bedroom. I just want to point out there is an office with a door that qualifies as a bedroom. I believe Ms. King tried to solve the problem by putting in an additional door. In order for that room to not qualify as a bedroom, you either need to open it up. There is not a condition proposed right now that says that room shall not be used, the office shall not be used as a bedroom. But I want to put it out that at some point you're going to want to register somehow that office one way or another to confirm, because they're holding the 3 bedrooms as they're stating, they're not being required to go in with the 600 square feet of parking. However, that office walks and talks and looks like a bedroom. So you're going to want to button that up in one way or another.
We don't object to that either, and my client can speak to what that will be used for. I understand recently they had 4 different Zooms going on and they need privacy, but it's going to be used as an office. It's certainly not going to be used as a bedroom, and we can stipulate to a condition to that effect. I don't think we have any issue with that.
I think we can even increase the door size to do like 2 French doors that can be glass, so there's not an expectation of privacy. So whatever it's generally going to be used as an office, so however you guys want us to stipulate that.
Typically, staff would require it to be open. I think Ms. Keene is referring to the regulation which says 48 inches wide. Right. And you can also put a condition on it that it shall not be used as a bedroom.
And obviously, the plans that we've submitted don't suggest that it's a bedroom, and we'd be burdened by the plans that are before you and that we're applying with. So any change in that would be subjected to the plans that we've submitted, but certainly any condition or comment to that effect, we have no objection to.
But we restricted 48 inches. And you're telling me you can't make the 48?
Oh, no, I'm saying we can. Like, right now, that door is probably 30 inches.
Right.
Even if it's glass, we can arrange it so like we have a 4-foot opening. We just need doors for an office, that they can be glass, things like that.
Don't think you can have glass. You cannot have a door.
I don't know that I don't.
Right, so this is where Ms. Keene and I, yes, we've had this conversation offline, where the ordinance says 48 inches wide, it doesn't specify, but bedrooms are defined as something with a door.
And an expectation of privacy, with a glass door, there is no expectation of privacy, which is why I mentioned that, because the sound is, because they're actually using it as an office, they like need a door for sound, but it
So-
doesn't matter how wide it is or if you can see it.
For belts and suspenders, Mr. Chairman, you could do both.
Heard that term before.
We can let Bob speak to it more.
Oh, you got it out there.
So, I want to go back,
Thank you.
when you were asking, Ms. Keene, your questions, you said, one of the questions you asked, I believe, was something like, is the project in compliance with development and performance standards? And Ms. Keene said yes. The planning board said no. So, tell me why you have two different.
I probably misspoke.
Oh, okay.
It would be if you were, like, building-wise, FEMA-wise,
Because I was gonna say, why are you here if it's in
Correct.
compliance with development
I
standards?
should have, thank you for
Okay.
pointing it out, even when yes.
Okay.
CRMC-wise, FEMA-wise, code-wise, and zoning, given your, allowance for it, then it would be.
Okay.
Otherwise, no, it does not, that's why you're correct.
I have one question, because this came up in the prior hearing, which you weren't here when the evidence was adduced at that hearing, but it seems that this, I don't know if it's gonna start occurring frequently, but in these projects that require FEMA compliance, it seems like it's a architectural challenge to sometimes construct something that's gonna comply with that, comply with the FAR regulations, and comply with everything else. So can you just touch upon that, because it may assist us with anyone here who's struggling with the reason why there's a FAR variance, because it seems like oftentimes these FEMA regulations are making it very challenging for architects to come up with a design that is aesthetically pleasing and everything else. So if you could just address that.
Of course, and I agree, like I said, I put a big paramount on trying to make it look good, like going to a big extent to do so. So with the FEMA, right, like this is, the average grade of this property is 14 and change. The flood zone that FEMA says is those waves, the wave action that's right out front there, could hit up to 17 feet. So that's 3 feet high, right? You need to put your lowest structural horizontal member a foot above that, because who knows, right? Like just safety. You're allowed to go up to 5 feet beyond that, but you can't use any mechanicals, you can't put any structural member. As soon as wherever you put your lowest structural member, that determines where you start your building height. So as you increase the freeboard, that free 1 to 5 feet, your building height is, assuming the same design, is consistent, but it goes above grade, which is why there's that ascending chart in the ordinance, which is good. I agree with it. I think it's a good thing. Anyways, you can't put anything under there. So typically you could have a basement in here, right? Like I could put a full foundation, if FEMA didn't exist right there, I'd put a full foundation, I'd put all my mechanicals down there, I'd put whatever I wanted down there that met all of the things. And we wouldn't be here asking for a lot of that. Further, the covered porch, we're trying to envelope you in because of the approach that is there. So in this particular case, we have more steps. So like you can't just have like a run of steps up to this little tiny platform. It's just uncomfortable because now you're higher. So we have a run of steps that runs into a covered porch that envelopes around again, kind of going toward, if FEMA wasn't a consideration, could you have a smaller one? Perhaps. It wouldn't, it's pretty damn small here, sorry, excuse me, it's pretty small here, but it just goes to the idea that you really have to everything is already so high, like the lower you can keep it, which is hard, and it's hard to convince, honestly, aside from that, it's hard to convince clients that like you don't need to have these monstrosities up along the coast. It doesn't look good from the water. I couldn't agree more. We really aren't trying to, like I said, not come before you and put that up, right? Because that is what, even FEMA, that is assuming FEMA, right? Because this red box is just saying, if we did not come and ask for any relief, we would be allowed to do this by right. But we're here pleading with you to allow us to do this. That's essentially slightly off topic. But anyways, yes, we'd be putting the mechanicals down below. We wouldn't have as big of an issue with the garage, right? Because you're in FEMA compliance. You're allowed to drive into a garage, but now you need 7 steps, 6 steps just to get up to your first floor. So now that has to be bigger. It makes it all very challenging. Further, even if just a portion of that house crosses that line, that whole house needs to be FEMA compliant. So like I said, if we pushed it back, we would just be here saying, we're pushing this house back, we're not putting a penny more into it, and asking for, if anything, more relief in terms of dimensional relief. Yes, the whole house has to be compliant.
That's my point precisely, is that I guess in Narragansett, we can have a choice to have the red box on stilts all over town, or we can have this beautifully designed structure, which is modest in my opinion for that area. And we're gonna need variances to do that. Or we can have that with no variances. You don't even need to waste your time being here, so
I love
you
that.
answered my question.
Ellen, any further questions?
No.
Any further questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, have more questions for Mr. Keane. My client is here. I think he wants to say a few words.
Please.
You want to hear from me, that's all. Right.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last.
Robert E. Spangler, S-P-A-N-G-L-E-R.
Thank you.
Mr. Spangler, could you just introduce yourself to the board and tell them how long you've owned the property for?
Yeah, so we bought this house in 2006, so we're approaching 20 years. You know, we bought it as our second home for the summer. Our kids grew up here in the summer. In fact, our boys we're sort of attached to Rhode Island. They both went to Providence College. They now live in Boston, and they're sort of, they've launched their careers. They're clearly not leaving Massachusetts, would be my guess. My daughter just graduated Villanova, and she's got a job in New York City. So as we sort of think of our next chapter in life, right, we want to make this a semi-permanent home. I mean, we'll probably still keep our house in Connecticut, but it gives us a chance to have a dining room. We don't have a dining room table currently. There's a crack that's not insignificant in the foundation in the family room that you can see. One of those bedrooms now is clearly a kid's 2 twin beds. You can barely fit into it. It fit for the 2 boys when they were growing up. We want to have room for the family to grow as they have kids, they get married, whatever happens in life. So we decided we want to put our stake in the ground in Narragansett. I was going to tell you, and I wanted to thank you all for your service. I was on my town board for 16 years in Connecticut and on the Board of Finance, and so sat through way too many meetings like this. But so I very much appreciate everything you're doing, and I appreciated the comments. Like, this is trying to solve a puzzle, right? And you have conflicting goals on trying to hit it. We very much wanted this. The aesthetics were important to us. There are some less aesthetically pleasing places near us. And so we were really trying to sort of make that end of that street has almost every home has been redone, except for this one. Now the inside, we've redone everything in this house. Brand new kitchen, within the time we owned it, new kitchen, all 3 new baths. So in some respects, I kind of hate to let that go because it works so well. But we realized our next chapter in our lives will be to have this be a more permanent home. And so this, Lori took it from there. But we love the design, and we're really trying to make it as unobtrusive as possible. We like our neighbors. We want to stay here for a long time, and so we're just trying to solve that puzzle.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask you about the door in the office.
Oh, yeah. So actually, what I told her is I wanna move this, like, I think we need to expand our living room. I actually kinda wanna move that main wall. Keep it, was it working? Oh, there it is. Yeah, I asked her to move that this direction, so to cut it off, because why, we're not there to stay in our bedrooms, right? We're there to enjoy the ocean, be in the family room, have the kids there, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see what she comes up with, but I want to move that wall, I don't know, as far as we can,
Sure.
right? So this makes this even more of a, of a smaller space that what is now the office. I don't know when I'm gonna retire, but so whatever, say 5 more years I'll be working, we use WebEx on Zoom, but so I'll be, I'm on a WebEx. Both my boys work for tech companies in Boston, doing sales, and they are on Zoom or whatever they're on. And my wife's a consultant, so there was a day, that's a truthful statement. All 4 of us were on calls, and so we're all kind of in our little cubbies trying to be quiet and keep the door shut and all that kind of stuff. And so it will get used as an office for sure. How you decide, whatever is the right way to figure that out, that's fine by me. It will be, a little bit more collapsed. I mean, it's nice just to have an extra space, just to throw things, to have an extra room. I'm a big reader, and we fill with books, I guarantee it. So that's the idea. Upstairs, there's a real bedrooms. They're sizable. I'm assuming my kids get married. Their families will be up there. That was the idea. But we wanted to keep it, pretty close to what it is today. The other thing I'd tell you, we looked around. We wanted to stay in Narragansett. How could we stay on the water? And this really, we decided there's no better place. We love the view. It's a great spot. We call it magic hour when the sun comes down and you get pink skies. So we wanted to keep that. So and the other thing is as I said, being on the town board, I get involved in my community. So as we think about this as our second community, I just think you'll have a family that's pretty involved.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. We have nothing further, Mr. Chairman, but happy to field any additional questions you may have.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Sally. We have no further questions from the board at this moment? Excellent. Okay, I'll ask for public comment for proponents. Anyone would like to speak in favor of this project? Hearing none, is there anyone who'd like to speak opposed to the project?
I just have a few comments.
That's always the rub. You don't lose that middle ground.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last.
Frank Bottari, F-R-A-N-K, B-O-T-T-A-R-I.
Thank you.
And I'm at 15 Captain Freetown. So just have a few comments, from the neighborhood to see how how it's changed in the last dozen years or so. And it is a very attractive design, and I really like that compared to we've seen, what's happened with all the huge boxes. And I know the town has done a lot of work, defining with the FAR and the zoning, to keep the houses from taking over the lots. And this neighborhood is very small lots, and I understand and appreciate the fact that with the ocean in back, that it makes this lot even smaller. But I do like the design. What I am concerned about though, is that the bump out, because that's very significant, puts it very close to the road. And we have other examples with houses close, where the variants go close to the road. It does affect the neighborhood, and parking is a main issue, because there will be very little room, in the front there, and the driveway is small. And I know the planning board, and we talked about the office, which they questioned, could that be used as another bedroom? That's another car. So my concern in the neighborhood is all of that parking cars are going to be now out, closer into the neighborhood. And just that, and there was a discussion, I asked, does it have to be, and you asked, does it have to be that big? Is there another alternative where possibly, the utility room, the laundry, could go, have a smaller footprint there, smaller entrance. I think that would fit in with the neighborhood, and I really concerned about seeing, encroaching now, and I know you can't go out to the sides because it's only 3 or 5 feet on one side, 8 feet on the other. And now it's pushing out towards the street. And as that happens in the neighborhood, it does change the neighborhood. So that's my concern about it.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Mr. Landry, last words?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, Ms. Keene did a very good job of explaining the design constraints, what the intent is here to be respectful, maintain the integrity and the character of the neighborhood. This is a much better proposal than what could potentially be on this property. By right, much more intrusive, much larger, much less appropriate, I think, in my opinion, in Ms. Keene's professional opinion, of the character of the neighborhood. Certainly much smaller, than other homes in the immediate vicinity. It's very modest. The FEMA issues, the FAR issues, I think Ms. Keene had eloquently explained the need for this bump out and where it's going. We've already addressed the parking concern. There's ample parking on the property now, so that shouldn't be a concern. There's really no other alternative to asking for relief because of all the design constraints, and she went through that at length as to everything. Even if we were to try to do something to make it FEMA compliant, by some other alternative, we'd still be in front of you asking for some type of relief, probably more relief than what we're asking for now. So we think this respectfully really represents the least intrusive, most respectful design for this property. It's appropriate. They're not asking for any more than is necessary. They're not expanding the bedrooms. They're not really asking for much more than what their own family needs for their own personal purposes in a modernized, an old structure on a very constrained lot. So with that, appreciate that. Thank you.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Keene, can you address the issue that Mr. Batari raised with respect to possibly shrinking the entry and the laundry room?
Yes, so thank you for the comments. All things that we're concerned about and doing the best that we can do to hopefully have this house and project, if approved, become an example so that when someone comes before you and says, hey, this guy's this far off the property line, why can't my intrusive house now be this far off the property line? Which I imagine is part of the concern. You start with one and now you keep going. But the point here would be like, well, then that can be used as an example going forward that like, yes, many can do this and bring that whole face out, right? Or can you, work toward a design overall that could be more aesthetically pleasing while pushing the envelope slightly, is one thought. Then secondly, that section of that building is only 10 feet wide, and then it goes straight to open porch. Like, it's not the whole face of the building being that close up. It really is meant to be as small as possible to allow for, I think you had it maybe 2 back, or either way. It's this part of the building, right, that we're trying to small on the corner, far enough away so that like this is all void, that's all the void, so that it doesn't feel like it's as close. Again, there's nowhere else to put the mechanical room with the FEMA compliant design that we're in, and in the rest of the restrictions, like I said, for the parking, trying to increase it because agree, parking's an issue, so can we add another spot? Width-wise, right now their driveways are 10 feet wide or so, 12 maybe, and so we're adding space to allow for 2 cars to park side by side, and keeping, again, that front yard softscape. We're 15% more than what's required for a front yard softscape, which is that statute is meant to not have a whole parking lot outside, or, the point of that softscape is to protect the interest that, he's expressing as well. So, we only need to be 43% or 57.7% softscape that front yard. Yes. And the actual like space of the addition, this is 10 feet. Like sometimes on paper like that it looks so much more. We are almost 11 feet from here to the podium. I mean, almost 10 feet from here to the podium. It's just not very big. We're really trying to keep it as small as possible.
But couldn't you, so we talked before, we think roughly 2 feet closer than the house to the north, to the front setback.
Yeah.
Couldn't you take 2 feet off your entry and 2 feet off your laundry room and just push everything back?
So if we were to do that, the space in the mechanical room would suffer, and then this junction where that salt box runs into the covered porch roof, like that's intentionally lower so that covered porch kind of blocks on top of it, and then the next roof goes up from there. If we were to just reduce that back, it would, between railing and wall is only going to be 4.5 feet, so like that's not very wide, and it's going to feel very cramped if we go any lower. 2 feet would almost make it unusable at that point because you'd be down to 30 inches for that covered porch.
No, I'm talking the entry itself. So behind the covered porch, if you just pushed everything 2 feet, yeah, cut 2 feet off the entry and 2 feet off the laundry room.
So, and right now they walk right into this kitchen and an entryway, like again, 8 feet. So this entryway is now even smaller. Like it's such a small space when you come in to have a drop zone of dueling as a mudroom, coming from the beach, where all the sandy towels go, where all the laundry baskets go. It's all of that stuff in like a very small area. We don't even have a true coat closet because we can't take more space out of it because we're trying not to ask for it. So, you know, this is like,
I mean,
18 inches
we
deep.
get all that, I mean, but that's all like more convenience things, not, I mean, what's this spot space here? Can you put something there that you could then take 2 feet off of here to make it more?
Then I think we'd be over our like FAR 0.35, like it really starts to increase the living space of something we don't need, so why would we ask for it? Also point out we're going with the geothermal so that we don't have condenser issue that also has to be raised up on a platform, and we're not here before you asking for more relief on the side yard or having a noise thing. And so with the geothermal system, that mechanical room is going to be like maxed out, if not going to already eat into that laundry room when all said and done. So we're already kind of going to lose some of that space as it is, would be my guess. I'm not a mechanical engineer, so I can't speak to that, but it's tight. A 70 square foot mechanical room likely would come out and need to have more space eaten up is going to be my guess for those geothermal walls that you've seen if you have all the equipment that is associated with them. But it reduces the need to have a condenser, if you've seen on a raised platform, because that is a mechanical system that needs to be above that floodplain. If that makes sense. It has to be above that, 18 foot. The bottom of it has to be above 18 feet as a platform. Then the condenser sits on top of it, and you kind of see those elevated. Which, where else could we really squeeze it would be on the other side, which starts to impact fire access and everything. The front of the house.
If you take the mechanical room and just take it as it is and push it back into the laundry, that messes with the roof lines, correct?
It does, yes. And I specifically want that to feel open because we're trying not to make it feel like, I think perhaps, and I'm not Steve from, but when you have a very tall face of a building without any relief toward it, regardless, it's going to feel imposing. I actually believe truly that this design will feel less imposing there than it would if we were to, again, not be here asking for any relief just because of that height as like a human when you're walking up to it. So again, while we are asking for the relief, this is, like I said, the least we genuinely feel. I truly believe that one room is going to get eaten out of when those mechanical guys come through and say no, we need more space. So I really caution to try to reduce it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
first and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, with regard to Project Sudbury Spangler, tax assessors plat L lot 1-13, I'm going to note the following facts for the record, introduce the following facts for the record. First of all, the project summary dated September 11, 2024. I would like to make that part of the record, obviously. We had testimony, the applicants are represented by Matt Landry, and he explained various reasons why the designs were the way they were, but then we had testimony from Miss Laura Keene about the project and the different variances and approvals that we need for this project. The relief requested is a variance and a special use permit under section 4.4 Coastal Resources Overlay District, relief from the dimensional requirements, lot coverage, front yard setback, left yard setback, and a FAR variance as well as a hardscape variance in different percentages. Ms. Keene testified that, I'll let the requirements to be able to grant these variances in this special use permit. Ms. Keene testified to all of these reasons why. Let's see. So many things. This one I'm having trouble with. So that is my summary of the facts. And then we did have the applicant himself testify as to how they plan to use the house for as almost a permanent residence, and they love the area and would like to stay here. We also heard testimony from Mr. Batari, specifically regarding the bump out that is in the front of the house and how he's concerned that it will affect the parking situation and that it imposes a little bit too much into the front yard. So that is those are my findings of fact into the record.
Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion to accept the findings of fact, properly made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to project summary Spangler, I make a motion to deny the relief as requested. I'm having a lot of trouble with several requirements that we have to meet to be able to grant these variances or this variance. One is I think there are alternatives to some of these designs. There are ways that you can reduce the FAR and the lot coverage. I mean, I don't think there's any question that the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the land. I mean, I understand the FEMA compliance and the fact that we have to go on the net lot coverage. to be able to calculate these, you know, maximum amounts for both FAR and lot coverage requirements. And it's not the result of any prior action of the applicant. However, can someone help me on the special use permit? If I can't find that we're in with development standards, like we can't do the, we don't have the other, because on the special use permit, we have to be able to find that, that it meets all of the development requirements.
Ms. Corno, the standards for a special use permit are on page 5 of 6.
Okay. I guess, Jill, my question is, if we can't grant the special use permit, then
So, maybe I'll jump in. You're kind of jumping back and forth between the dimensional relief
right.
and the special use permit relief. My suggestion is that if the reason why you're making a motion to deny is based upon the applicant's failure to prove for the evidence in the record a standard within the special use permit criteria, then you need to, the special use criteria is specifically and only goes to section 4.4 Coastal Resources Overlay District. So you would need for the record to say how and why the applicant didn't meet one of those. It's actually, it's possible to, you can grant a variance. You don't have to grant all the variances requested. It is possible to grant a variance and deny another variance. You could say, hey, the area is fine, but the height's too high, or something like that. So if you're looking at section 4. You're looking at just the special use permit, and therefore going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Within that criteria, you would have to cite some testimony on which one of that criteria that the applicant did not meet through its testimony, which would lead to a negative vote. And then you can't.
Is this under the new standards?
This is under the new standards. Okay. Now keep in mind, the new standards, as Matt said, really go to, in my opinion, go to the dimensional relief that's being requested, where the special use criteria, for lack of a better term, really didn't, there was no legislative change, although we had to make specific requirements for special use permits, which we have. The standards for reviewing zoning relief changed substantially for the dimensional part, but you still, but the standards for the special use part only changed with the fact if we didn't have anything, we needed to put it in, otherwise it's granted automatically, and we do have those in. So my suggestion is to take the first request first, which is the 4.4 Coastal Resources Overlay, and if your motion is to deny, you need to, again, state one of the reasons why in 1 through 7, what or how the applicant do.
So, I'm,
Before you go, Steve, I ask one more question.
Sure.
If the project is denied in its entirety, for the applicant to come back, there has to be substantial change to the project?
Correct, under the doctrine of administrative finality, all too well, is, would have to, in order for them to come back within a period of time, 1 or 2 years depending, is they would have to show that the project has substantial, has materially, the legal term is materially changed, either by the facts of the case, meaning has the design changed, or has the law changed? I just had one in Cranston where they were denied under the old law, they came back literally under the new law, which is a lower standard. That was deemed by the Cranston Planning Board, they deemed that as substantial change to get through the doctrine of administrative finality. But that shouldn't be considered for this. You should just be considering testimony of Ms. Keene, the applicant, what you have in the record, and any neighbors.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Gordon, thank you. So, Mr. Redetti, the relief for the special use permit is tied specifically to the coastal feature, to the rear portion of the property. I just want to be clear that those are the standards. So section 4 does have, when you look at the standards in your draft, in your report, it refers to 4, 7, 12, 17. There are other standards in section 4 that talk about specifically with respect to section 4.4, which is the coastal feature only. It's not, the special use permit standards don't apply to any of the variances that were discussed tonight. That's a different set of relief, which is also in your report.
okay.
Okay, so that relief for special use permit is only for the coastal feature.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to withdraw my motion to deny, and I'm going to make a motion to grant the approval.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we heard specifically with respect to section 4.4, we heard testimony tonight that, that satisfies the requirements of granting the special use permit. The use is authorized by ordinance. The changes here and the use is not going to substantially or permanently injure the appropriate use of surrounding property, and it's not going to alter the general character or surrounding area of the neighborhood. And I think we were able to consider all of the list that is in our book. With respect to the variances, Ms. Keene testified as well as Mr. Spangler testified that the lot has extremely unique characteristics. It is, they're trying to make the house FEMA compliant. A good portion of the lot is not able to be used because of the coastal feature. And if the lot actually, if all of the lot was to be used, we would have a lot of, we would probably fit into a lot more of the variances than we do now. The hardship was not the result of the prior action of the applicant, and the granting of these variances will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purposes of the zoning ordinances. So I make a motion to grant based on the facts presented and the testimony, I make a motion to grant both the special use permit and the variances.
Do you want, may I ask a question? Did you want to add anything about the office not becoming a bedroom?
About the what?
The office not becoming a bedroom?
Yes, well, I make a motion to grant with the conditions in the project summary, and adding an additional condition that the office shall not be used as a bedroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, that the office depicted on the
On
plan,
the plan.
dated, whatever
Whatever the date is.
Yep.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any further, I'm gonna ask this question, is there any further discussion? Thank you.
Did you want it to be in strict conformance or no?
I don't think can it be in strict conformance?
It is in strict conformance, that's condition number 1.
But again, even though we're changing, another condition to change the office. I got it, is there any question?
All right, great, thank you. That was
Thank
my
you.
question, thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Jill?
Thank you. Big picture, just not for this thing, but the overview one, you know, that shows yeah, I just need to ask both of you guys a question in general about these, not this case. So, well.
So we're still live,
Yeah,
the meeting's
we
still
are.
open. You have one more item on your agenda, are you still trying to talk about this?
Then we can, I just
Yeah.
have, I wanna leave that up if we can, I need to have a.
Oh, you had a question about GIS?
Yeah, well, we can do it after this,
Okay.
and I just wanna make sure I understand it.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, last item is item E, reports from staff. Decision template.
Mr. Allman.
I'm sorry I didn't get to you. That's what I'm sorry.
Mr. Allman.
I was just telling Christine how busy I've been lately, so
Okay,
my apologies.
no problem. Heidi
Reach out
updated, she
to
made it
me.
look very nice and she cleaned up my
I know, I
counters and
saw it.
whatnot, yeah.
There's only a couple things I want to talk to you about. It's
We can do it offline and bring it back next month, sure.
Exactly, it's just a matter of you and I connecting, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Continue?
Yes, continue.
No, I gave Heidi credit.
You want to, yes, sorry.
Oh.
We did- that's the closing
Oh,
meeting.
yeah.
All right, I have no further items on the agenda.
Yes, we do.
What do we have?
Adjournment.
Well, of course we have that.
Well, that's one more thing.
I move to
That's a-
adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
6-0 on that.
All right, so, stop it.